Well, welcome everyone. My name is Kimia, and I will be your MC for tonight. So to begin our program, I wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for being here today. And then I wanted to welcome and thank Brett Smith, who will be starting us off with some music and a prayer. And then after that, we will begin the talk portion of the evening. So Brett, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. You're welcome to start anytime you want.
Thank you. And maybe just a clarification. What I chose for this evening is a passage that I thought might be appropriate given the topic. And one of the verses in this from Baha'u'llah, he says, I am the sun of perception, the ocean of science. I revive the withered ones and quicken the dead. I thought that'd be a nice theme to get us in the mood. So let's start with that. La da la da, la da da da, la 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 la, la la da da da, la da da da, la da da da. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. I am the sun of perception, the ocean of science. I revive the withered ones and quicken the dead. I am the light that illumines the path of insight. I am the falcon of the hand of the Almighty. I bring healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring. I bring healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring to the heaven of truth. Ooh, la 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 la, 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 la la. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, find me. Pass by whatever exists in this world and find me, oh find me. I am the sun of perception, the ocean of science. I revive the withered ones and quicken the dead. I am the light that illumines the path of insight. I am the falcon on the hand of the Almighty. And I bring healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring. I bring healing in my wings and teach the knowledge of soaring to the heaven of truth.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful start to our program. That's actually one of my favorite passages, so that was a really pleasant surprise. I now have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Kamran Sedig, who will be giving tonight's presentation. Dr. Sedig is a professor at Western University. His research and publications are interdisciplinary and are in cognitive, computer, and information sciences. His MSc and PhD are from McGill University and the University of British Columbia. He graduated with the most great distinction and was nominated for the Governor General's Gold Medal for the best PhD dissertation. He has published more than 130 scientific articles and books dealing with a range of topics, including human learning and cognition, design of computational tools that support complex human reasoning, health informatics, mind games for children, cognitive maps of knowledge, story-based knowledge socialization, system science, mathematical visualizations, human information interaction, cognitive technologies, and human-centered computing. So thank you very much to Dr. Sedig for being here tonight. And before I give you and your vast wealth of expertise the floor, I wanted to ask all participants to please direct any questions you have during the presentation to me in the Zoom chat. I will share them with Dr. Sedig at the end of the presentation during Q&A. So thank you very much, and go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a wonderful pleasure to meet you virtually, although I only see a few of you. And I want to thank Mrs. Masroor for this invitation. So as you can see, the topic is a bit mouthful, the eye of oneness, science and the divine will. So let's start. I hope we won't have any technological problems. Okay. So before I start, I wanted to say a few things. So we have the same expectations from this presentation. So we're going to examine the principle of oneness, its meaning and depth. And this is so this topic helps us to explore deeper and deeper levels of thought and understanding. It's a superordinate topic in the sense that thousands of ideas and practices can be derived from it. And it is, I think, the most fundamental topic to how we view life, ourselves, others, science, religion, and society. Now, what I'm going to do is I will try to use passages from the most recent world religion, Baha'i faith, from the 19th century, and correlate its concepts with ideas from philosophy, mathematics, psychology, and science. Now, in terms of what we should expect from this style of presentation, it is more conceptual, lecture-like. It's not narrative-based. And the reason for that is that the topic doesn't lend itself to interactive conversation. It is a bit complex, so we have to engage with it and be a bit patient, and then gradually it unfolds itself. So I'm going to share passages, and all the bolds and highlights are by me. Now, since I'm going to share some passages, maybe I can ask at this point. I don't like my own voice all the time. So is there someone who wants to volunteer to read some of the passages that I can ask them to read? And if Dr. Valerie can actually mute, because there is an echo here. Thank you. Is there someone who has who wants to read the passages?
This is Maureen. I'd be happy to do some reading.
Okay, thank you so much. So Maureen, okay. So let's start. So first of all, I want to say why I became interested in this topic. One of the first passages I encountered in the Baha'i scriptures was this particular one. I have shortened it. So this statement is from Baha'u'llah, and it goes as, the essence of all that we have revealed for these justice is for man, and I'm skipping a part of it, to discern with the eye of oneness God's glorious handiwork. I remember when I first encountered this passage, I kept wondering, what does justice have to do with the ability to discern God's glorious handiwork with the eye of oneness? And as I went deeper into this, I realized that the reason this is the essence, one can actually say this is the essence of all the scriptures, is that this ability to see with the eye of oneness is not an easy one. So that's what we want to do. We want to explore the concept in a bit of depth. And I must confess that it is impossible to do justice to this topic in half an hour or 40 minutes or with a few slides. You can actually bring thousands of books to put into this, but we will give it a try. And Maureen, maybe now you want to start, please.
It is a magnificent feeling to recognize the unity of complex phenomena, which appear to be things quite apart from the direct visible truth. From Albert Einstein, theoretical physicist.
Thank you. Okay, so, and this is how I'm going to do it. We try to have conclusions, and these conclusions gradually build on top of each other. So we have direct visible truths, or the surface of reality. And Einstein is saying that the recognition of unity of complex phenomena is basically not easy. So it's a magnificent feeling if we can actually see the underlying unity of complex phenomena. Now, this idea of oneness or one, along with manyness, these two are two cardinal concepts at the very foundation of philosophy and religion. So one gives us identity and unity, and manyness gives us variety. And maybe you can read the passage from Gilbert Ross, please.
In many ancient philosophies, such as Taoism, Kabbalah, Hinduism, etc., we find a more or less shared reference to a dynamic between the one and the many. Gilbert Ross, British philosopher.
Okay, so this thing is the foundation of unity in diversity. And this principle of unity in diversity is a dialectic dance between the one and the many. And the key word there is dynamic dance, or the dialectic between the two. Okay, so the first maybe challenging thing that we encounter when dealing with the concept of one is how our consciousness works. Now, this particular slide, again, if I can claim, you can actually write hundreds of books about this, but I'm going to explain it. And if it's not clear, maybe we can delve deeper into it at the end. So the concept of one itself does not arise from bodily senses. We cannot perceive one using our senses. And the reason for this is, if you think about a human being as an entity that is made of component parts, and any other thing that you see, again, made of parts, if you break both the entity down into infinitesimal parts, then in reality, there is no such thing as one. And because a human being, again, if you break us down into infinitesimal parts, it is impossible to actually get to the one per se. So whatever it is in human beings that conceptualizes oneness must of necessity be an abstraction. It cannot be a physical material thing that perceives oneness. So therefore, one itself is an abstraction, and what we perceive through our immediate senses is diversity, and diversity is concrete. Diversity is what we actually perceive using our senses. So in this sense, then manyness is experienced through senses, and oneness is a conceptualization and not experienced through direct perception. Hopefully this becomes clear as we move along. Now, one itself is another very challenging concept in mathematics. Now, psychologically, we use the concept of one to condense the field of information so that we can deal with things. Now, at a very fundamental level, both 0 and 1 are undefinable. And we human beings operate using certain fundamental root metaphors of cognition. And one can argue whether it's because it is built into us or whether it comes from the external world. I actually think it's dialectic. But there are 4 fundamental root metaphors of human thought, but 2 of them in which we're interested for now. One is we have the ability to see distinctiveness, and then at the same time we see continuousness, and that depends on our attention. We can focus on something and think that it is one, or we can see multiplicity of things blending into each other and seeing them as a whole. Now, these 2 root metaphors give us arithmetic and geometry, because one of them gives us numbers, one of them gives us the concept of space. So this was just introductory. So far, what have we done? So we see that one and many are at the base of philosophy and religion. In psychology, one is a conceptualization. It's an abstract conceptualization, and it doesn't arise from bodily senses. In mathematics, one is undefinable because it is a fundamental concept. And in ordinary life, our thoughts tend to see distinction, manyness, and differences. Well, so the first challenging statement that we encounter is this one. Maybe Maureen can read this, please.
Sure. There is but one reality and one essence that is expounded in the worlds of outer form, and at each of its stages is described by a specific name, Bahá'í scriptures.
So this is actually a statement from Baha'u'llah. So we have one reality or one essence for now, and this will become clearer. This is the inner world. And then we have many forms, and we can think about this as the outer world that takes on many names. Next, and Maureen, if you would please also read the heading of the slide, so it condenses the information field. Thank you.
Essential / intrinsic oneness of phenomena. There is an intrinsic oneness of all phenomena. This is one of the abstruse subjects of divine philosophy. The origin and outcome of phenomena are identical, and there is an essential oneness in all existing things. This is a subtle principle requiring close analysis and attention. Any given phenomenon embodies all others. From the Bahá'í scriptures.
Thank you. So this principle of oneness in this passage, it suggests that this principle is universal. It is in all things, which means there is an essential oneness of all phenomena, implying that any phenomenon embodies all other phenomena. which implies that this manifests as self-similarity of phenomena. And self-similarity means parts are small replicas of wholes. This has revolutionary implications for the understanding and development of all branches of modern science and philosophy. So even though it's a very short statement, the implications are breathtaking. Next, please.
One natural system and law. Universal beings resemble and can be compared to particular beings, for both are subjected to one natural system, one universal law, and divine organization. So you will find the smallest atoms in the universal system are similar to the greatest beings of the universe. It is clear that they come into existence from one laboratory of might, under one natural system and one universal law. High scriptures.
Okay, so this statement says that we have one natural system and law, and this is why we have similarity between universal and particular. So the question is, can we demonstrate this scientifically? So once again, I'm going to give another concept here. Again, forgive me if some of you are not familiar with this concept, but this is going to play a fundamental role in how we discuss this issue. There is a concept called isomorphism. Morph is shape. Iso means same shape or similar shape. So isomorphism is basically correspondence between objects or systems of objects expressing the equality of their structure. So you can have two things that do not look the same, but at a deeper level, they have the same structure, the same attributes, the same conceptual patterns. And maybe Maureen can read the next passage, please.
Isomorphisms are models that are used to compare two seemingly different systems or phenomena and point out the dimensions along which they are similar. An isomorphism makes the claim that at some deep level, the two systems are identical in their form and function. Despite perhaps operating on different time and space scales and being created out of different materials, there is a one-to-one mapping of everything from one system to the other. At a deep level, all spirals are the same. That's tranquilo.
Thank you. So for those who may not be familiar with this, an easy example is, I'm sure most of you have played tic-tac-toe. If you take the 15 puzzle and tic-tac-toe, on the surface, they look different. But at the level of deeper structure, they are exactly the same problem. So isomorphism basically says we should go beyond surface and look at deeper levels of something. So we have one natural system, and that implies that we have beings that resemble each other. And isomorphism is born out of that one natural system. And it is not easy to detect when surface structures are not identical. So isomorphism requires a certain type of eye to be able to see it. Okay, so I wanted to share 10 isomorphic systems here. Okay, and maybe, so these are beings that resemble because they all come from the same laboratory of might. And maybe maybe Maureen can read what these are.
Yes, beings resemble 10 isomorphic systems. Got human lungs, veins, nerves, isotopic carbon transport, snowflake, leaf, the human heart, Amazon rivers, X-ray of quantum material, and a tree.
So even though these are not the same thing externally, but at the level of deep structure, they're all isomorphic. So where do we get science from, or the unity of science, that we assume there is an order and we can study things? So for those who may not know Ludwig van Bartholome, he was one of the founders of system science. And what he says is unity of science is granted by the structural uniformity, i.e. isomorphism of the different levels of reality. So this concept of isomorphism and the ability to actually see deeper structures gives us unity of science. So we have one natural system, which, as Abdu'l-Baha had claimed, that gives us beings that resemble, that gives us isomorphism, and that gives us unity of science. Now I want to go from isomorphic structures to something that we are all familiar with, and that is the concept of analogies. We all use analogies. And maybe Maureen can perhaps read these, please.
Analogies and human thought. Analogy is the core of cognition. Categorization and analogy making are the roots of thinking. Thinking exists in a vast ocean of invisible analogies. Douglas R. Hofstadter. Only analogies enable us to recognize deep essences behind surface appearances. Bryce Christensen. Analogy is the mechanism underlying the myriad instances of concept formation and categorization, without which there would be no thought. Nancy Nersessian.
Now, these are amazing claims. So now I want to add a few things. So we have one natural system, which means beings resemble. That gives us isomorphism. From isomorphism, because that is built into the environment, we get analogies and metaphors. And analogies and metaphors give us concept formation and categorization, which becomes the core of cognition, core of human thinking. Next, we have something else called general systems theory. General systems theory is basically the science of sciences. And please, let's read this.
I'm going to pass it over to Layli to share the love. Go ahead, Layli.
Layli needs to be unmuted,
Yeah.
Mr. Jabiri.
Thank you. I was just trying to mime that I couldn't unmute myself.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to read. Analogies are explanations done by relating something not yet understood to something understood. Isomorphism exists when common characteristics, structures, formulas, and form of organization are in accordance in different systems. The use of isomorphism made possible the indirect study of systems in terms of other systems, and the use of content-independent methods within different scientific areas. Step by step, a theory was established, the General Systems Theory, or GSC. Lars Skytner, the Swedish system scientist.
Thank you. Okay, so now this one, so I have one system and I have another system that I don't understand, but I can indirectly study this other system in terms of the first one that I do understand. And not only I can do this, it's independent of the content of the first one. So one divine organization gives us isomorphism, that gives us analogies, and that gives us analogical thinking. Without analogical thinking, we would not be able to have the science of sciences or general systems theory. So for those who may not know what general systems theory is, so we have different disciplines. We have, I don't know, biology, physics, etc. General systems theory goes above all of these and studies sciences at a meta level. Okay, so what have we learned so far? Without one natural organization and law, there cannot be isomorphism. Without isomorphism, we would not have analogies and metaphors. Without analogies, we would not go beyond surface of life. Without isomorphism and analogical depth, there would be no concept formation and categorization. And without concepts, there would be no real human thinking. Without that, without all these, there would be no science and there would be no study of sciences. So GST would not even exist. Okay, so next I want to go to general systems. From general systems theory, we want to go to string theory and vibration. So this theory is, unlike many empirical sciences, as physicists started studying different branches of physics, they wanted to unify all branches of physics. And superstring theory was born. But the challenge of superstring theory is that it is not an experimental type of physics. It comes and unifies classical physics, which is the things that we touch and feel and we think that's real. It unifies it with the quantum world. And then what we get is not experimental theory. And for those who are familiar with Karl Popper, one of the things that you use in the sciences is the falsification method. So if one empirical evidence or something goes against a theory, then you can falsify the whole theory. But because string theory is not an empirical discipline, it is entirely mathematical. It cannot be falsified. Now, what they postulate is that the foundation of reality is made of vibrating strings. For those who want to have a better understanding of this, there are many books, but there is one particular documentary. It's called The Elegant Universe. It's a PBS Nova. So you may want to buy Brian Greene's book. There are many other books, by the way. So the key here is that superstring theory comes and tells us that at the foundation of reality, you have these vibratory strings and everything in the universe is vibrating. Okay, so who is reading now? Anyone? Is it
Layli? Layli?
I can't see Layli.
A vibrating force. The mystery of eternal might, a God-born force, vibrates within the innermost being of all created things. Bahá'í scriptures.
Sorry, I can't unmute myself. I have to be given permission to do it every time.
Okay.
Look,
So-
Layli, if you don't want to read, just
Okay, so I hope that we can see a correlation between new physics and scriptural statements. We have another physicist, John Hagelin, who talks about one unified field of existence. again, there are videos you can go and watch, or there are books you can read. So this one, so there is another area of physics called unified field theory of physics, in which you come and try to unify the 4 types of forces that exist out there. But anyway, what they now claim their understanding is that all forces arise from within a universal field. This field is non-physical, so it's very similar to superstring theory, and all phenomena are ripples on this one ocean of existence. So everything arises from vibrations of this ocean. Okay. Again, I didn't want to go too much into these things because that's not our purpose. All we want to do is to go deeper into the concept of developing the eye of oneness. So let's read these passages now.
One ocean of existence. All the saplings of the world have appeared from one tree, and all the drops from one ocean, and all beings owe their existence to one being. Bahá'í Scriptures. Real existence is sanctified and exalted above all expression, an existence through which all things are realized. This existence is one. It is that one through which all things, such as matter, energy, and that common existence which is conceived by the human mind, have come. Bahá'í Scriptures.
Thank you. So again, I hope that we can see perfect correlation between new physics and scriptural statements. Okay. Okay, now I want to take it a bit deeper. And Maureen, can you please read this slide?
Sure. Thank goodness we're going deeper.
I was going to say, when are we going to go deeper?
Divine will and vibration. Every object is deeply stirred by the vibrating influence emanating from God's invincible will. Sanctified be the Lord of all mankind, at the mention of whose name all the atoms of the earth have been made to vibrate. The mystery of lordship and the effulgence of the eternal vibrate within the very atoms of all created things. From the Bahá'í Scriptures.
Okay, so now we see the similarity between these statements from the 19th century scriptures and string theory. But there is one difference. Here, it tells us what the source of the vibration is. The source of the vibration is the divine will. Now, we don't want to go into subtle aspects of this for now, but I think this should suffice. As long as now we start thinking that there is something behind the vibration, and that is the divine will. Now, this one I'm going to read myself, because the source of this oneness, so I'm going to explain this and then read it. So we often think of cause and effect as being separate things, or they have different agencies. This is one of the most challenging statements in the Bahá'í scriptures, because what it actually says is that existence, not only we have continual creation, but that the cause and the effect are the same thing. But one of them is happening in the abstract realm, the other one in the concrete realm. But there are two sides of the same coin. So maybe now Maureen can read these, and with that, keeping that in mind, we'll see how amazing these two statements are.
Source of oneness. The world of existence came into being through the heat generated from the interaction between the active force and that which is its recipient. Ethereal substance is itself both the active force and the recipient. The ethereal substance is therefore the cause, since light, heat, and electricity appear from it. It is also the effect, for as vibrations take place in it, they become visible. Bahá'í Scriptures.
So medium of vibration is both the cause and the effect. It is both abstract and material. And this is, again, is very similar to superstring theory. Why? Because you both have the strings in a concrete sense, but at the same time, it's just a mathematical space. It is not physical. And if you remember the field theory, it is non-physical. So physicality, which is the effect, is coming out of the abstract world. Okay, this one, please.
God's glorious handiwork. Discern with the eye of oneness, God's glorious handiwork. All creatures emanate from God. That is to say, it is by God that all things are realized, and by God that all beings have attained to existence. Those are from the Bahá'í Scriptures. The relation of the world as a whole to God does give it greater unity. That's by Mortimer Adler, American philosopher.
So remember, we were talking about unity of science. So now we need a frame of reference, in this case, God, to actually unify all things. And the concept of oneness would not exist without that absolute frame of reference. That is why divine unity is at the foundation of most religions. Even the ones that don't talk about it, fundamentally it's there. Okay, next please.
Universal oneness. The world of matter is an outer expression or facsimile, i.e. photocopy, of the inner kingdom of spirit. Earthly and heavenly, material and spiritual, accidental and essential, particular and universal, structure and foundation, appearance and reality, and the essence of all things, both inward and outward, all of these are connected with one another and are interrelated in such a manner that you will find that drops are patterned after seas, and that atoms are structured after suns in proportion to their capacities and potentialities. Universal and particular are in reality incidental and relative considerations. Any given phenomenon embodies all others. Bahá'í Scriptures.
Okay, now this is deep. So we have the outer world and an inner world. The two are photocopies of each other, not in terms of exact detail or surface similarity, but as they do exist as isomorphic realities at a profound level. Not only that, all levels of reality are isomorphic and embedded in one another. Okay, I repeat, all levels of reality are isomorphic and embedded in one another. This is a breathtaking concept for me. So what do we have in the Baha'i faith? We have all kinds of onenesses: oneness of God, oneness of reality, oneness of phenomena, oneness of prophets, oneness of religions, oneness of humanity, oneness of religion and science, oneness of spiritual faculties, oneness of knowledge, oneness of all life, oneness of natural systems, oneness of divine organization, oneness of history, oneness of divine law, oneness of worlds of existence, and essential oneness of all existing things. So in other words, Baha'i faith implies that we have to have the eye of oneness at the level of fundamental reality. Now, oneness immediately implies diversity, manyness, and multiplicity at the level of surface. But it's very important to realize that oneness is not the same as sameness, uniformity, or homogeneity. This has been the challenge of humanity always. Because if we don't understand oneness, we confuse uniformity and homogeneity with oneness. So there are all kinds of examples. I've just given references in the form of where those oneness come from. But here are some examples of oneness. And please, Maureen.
Should I read or?
Yeah, you
Please
go ahead.
ahead.
Thanks,
Yes.
Bailey.
Your souls are as waves on the sea of the spirit. Although each individual is a distinct wave, the ocean is one. All are united in God. The spirit in the soul is the very essence of life. Baha'i scriptures. The world is within this world.
That world. Referring
Thank
to
you.
the-
That world is within this world. The people of this world, however, are unaware of that world and are even as the mineral and the vegetable that know nothing of the world of the animal and the world of man. Baha'i scriptures. The Baha'i faith upholds the unity of God, recognizes the unity of his prophets, and inculcates the principle of the oneness and wholeness of the entire human race.
Thank you. So the first one is the unity of individual souls with the ocean of spirit. The second one is the unity or oneness between this world and the next, life after death. And then the other one is another example. Okay, so now we have oneness in mathematics and science. Almost all concepts in mathematics and science and linguistics originate from the principle of oneness. We have fractals, self-similarity, isomorphism, holographic universe, interconnectedness, consciousness, noetic science, and we touched upon general systems theory, analogical reasoning, metaphoric speech, and category theory in mathematics. Again, I apologize that we don't have time to go into these, but this is a bird's eye view of this whole concept. Now, reality, the Baha'i scriptures say, reality is one, as we have seen already, and indivisible. So this is at the deep level. And oneness is truth, and truth is oneness. Now, this is from Mortimer Adler. Truth is one comprehensive, integral, and coherent whole in which there are many parts. Now, what do we learn from this? Indivisibility of reality gives us reality is one. And because that is the case, oneness and truth become synonymous. We want to actually ponder upon this concept because it's very profound. Now I'm going back to the beginning of this presentation, what caused the interest in me to reflect upon that passage from Baha'u'llah. Reality is one. Reality is justice. Reality is knowledge of verities. And then let's go to that statement from Baha'u'llah again. The essence of all that we have revealed for thee is justice, is for man to discern with the eye of oneness God's glorious handiwork. Now, so justice then becomes the ability to discern reality and oneness. In other words, being just to the divine will to ourselves, other human beings, to religion, to study of scriptures, to science. So justice implies having the eye of oneness to see the truth or reality of things. Otherwise, we cannot be just to divine will. Why? Because we cannot see or understand God's will for humanity, or religions, or history, or us, or even nature. We cannot understand ourselves. We are not just to ourselves. Why? Because we do not have the eye of oneness to see our own identity, to understand why there has to be a unification of our mind, feelings, and intentions. And without that, because then we are not truthful at a profound level. I'm not talking about truth as expression of facts. Truthfulness is the appearance of the eye of oneness within the reality of a human being. And that creates justice. And justice is truthfulness. So, for me, this is an amazing conceptualization that Baha'u'llah has given us, equating justice with the eye of oneness. Okay, so let's summarize and then we'll have some time for discussion, okay? So at the very beginning, in the Baha'i scriptures, it says that this principle of oneness is subtle and abstruse. And now hopefully we see why it's subtle and abstruse. We correlated materials from Baha'i faith, philosophy, psychology, mathematics, and science to support this principle of oneness. And what is oneness? Inherently, oneness is an abstract spiritual principle which actually stems from spirit, from divine spirit. We correlated the concept of vibration found in the Baha'i writings with string theory. And we noticed that Baha'i scriptures say that this oneness originates in the divine will. And that to understand oneness with ever deeper levels of consciousness requires the recognition of the divine will. Without the divine will, it's difficult. Why? For instance, if I am stuck in, let's say, my religion or my this and my that, it's very difficult to have that eye of oneness. Understanding oneness enables us to approach truth. At a profound level, then, seeing with the eye of oneness implies a complete reorientation of our thoughts and the ability to see self-similarity, isomorphism, in abstract, non-physical, and spiritual reality. So it moves us away from the surface of life or materiality into spirituality. So even when we talk about spirituality, without the eye of oneness, we cannot be spiritual people. It also gives us another thing. When we see, for instance, when we read the scriptures, the ability to see the holographic nature of the scriptures, that one passage actually embodies all other passages. One concept embodies all other concepts, and that they are all embedded in each other and they all come out of original oneness. So in that sense, then, this ability to see with the eye of oneness gives us unity of meaning that we can find in the scriptures. Without the eye of oneness, we are unjust. If we don't like seeing ourselves as unjust, then we have difficulty with justice. Exercise of justice requires discerning with the eye of oneness. Otherwise, we can be unjust without knowing it, because we are not just to reality. Eye of oneness is required in study of religious texts, comparing religions, conducting academic research, conducting scientific research, getting to know ourselves, treating others, developing a philosophy of life and society, etc. As I said at the very beginning, this is one of those topics that gives birth to thousands of other ideas and concepts. It is inexhaustible. Discerning with the eye of oneness goes far, far deeper than slogans that people put on themselves, you know, oneness or whatever. It's a very profound concept. And if we treat it casually, then we miss the point. Final thought. Maureen, please. Oh, she doesn't want to. Oh, Layli.
All right. A man should pause and reflect and be just. His Lord, out of measureless grace, has made him a human being, caused his mercy, which rises out of the dawn of oneness, to shine down upon him. Dost thou think thyself only a puny form when the universe is folded up within thee?
So that quoted part is from an Islamic statement. So basically, the seed of this idea of universal oneness was also in the Islamic scriptures, that within the reality of human beings, the totality of the universe is folded or embodied. Okay, so I hope that this presentation helps us exercise justice and discern God's glorious handiwork with the eye of oneness. And I'm done. Should I exit the slides so that we can have a conversation?
Sure.
Okay, with your permission then. Okay.
Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation, Dr. Sedig. As I said earlier, if anyone has any questions, because we want to move into the Q&A portion, please send them to me in the chat and I will read them aloud.
No difficult questions.
Also, we do have Professor Shaw Yu here from the University of Waterloo. You are co-hosted, Professor Shaw Yu, in case you want to ask a question. No pressure at all.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for the talk, Professor Sedig. And yeah, the things that you were mentioning about the oneness, the analogy that I taught a lot in my classes, because I'm teaching mechanical engineering and we have to do a lot of dimensionless numbers that we compare unity. So if it's much smaller than one, then it's very small, and much larger than one, it's very large. So so the students do have, sometimes they do feel difficult to see this type of analogy and dimensionless number. But I think that what you have mentioned today is actually quite profound, and I hope I can learn from you and then and use some of these concepts. Thank you.
It's very kind of you.
We actually have a question in the chat. The question reads, can you explain more how something can simultaneously be both cause and effect? This is difficult to grasp logically.
Yes. How many hours do we have? I think we can, let's go with an analogy. So think about the concept of logos, for instance, that is supposed to have two sides, both thought and speech. So thought part is abstraction, which is the cause, and speech is material, okay, perceptive, so to speak, and then it is concrete. That's one example. Again, it's an analogy to help with the understanding. But that passage that I mentioned, in order to appreciate that, we have to appreciate another concept, which I had taken out of that passage, not to create more confusion. The concept is called primal will. Primal will is the first emanation from the Godhead, and it is the, so to speak, breath of God. It's the first emanation, which is the cause of coming into being of all things. Now, the expression of the primal will in the world of creation, and I don't mean the world of creation here as material yet, is what is called this ethereal substance. So it is the expression of the primal will in the world of creation. Now, that ethereal substance is breath-like. So it is a spiritual reality, and in the material world, it expresses itself as vibration. Again, these are thoughts of, I mean, I could be completely wrong, so forgive me, don't punish me for this. So the expression of the ethereal substance in the material world is that vibratory field that gives then expression to all kinds of other forces. And at the abstract level, that ethereal substance can be referred to as spirit. So in order to actually, again, appreciate this, we have to change our orientation of our thought, moving from thinking that material reality or what we perceive is real and spirit is something that, oh, how can we prove? The Baha'i faith actually flips these around. Reality is spirit. The outer expression of it is matter. Now, so this, I think, is a linguistic device to help us understand. But in reality, at a very deep level, there is no difference between matter and spirit. So if we think about these, I mean, this is a problem they had in physics. Matter and energy are two sides of the same coin, and they express themselves. So the same thing expresses itself differently, probabilistically. And I think this is how the Baha'i faith challenges us, that reality is spirit. Okay, our consciousness is not material, our mind is not material. Again, we can go deeper into these, but one has to actually, I have to show another slide presentation to show why our consciousness is not material. It cannot be material. Why? The human mind is fundamentally not material. But because we live in a very, how should I say, the paradigms of science currently are still materialistic, even though they are crumbling, even though there is a shift and materialism is being challenged from every direction, despite all of this, I think if we change our orientation, we see that the two sides of the same coin, one can be abstraction, one can be material, and one can be regarded as cause and what can be regarded as effect. And if we go to that tablet of the universe from Abdul Baha, even these terms are relative terms. Universal and particular, abstraction and concrete, spiritual and material. All of these are relative terms that we use in order to engage in conversation. And it is a sort of movement of the inner reality of man towards understanding, because understanding itself is not material. Again, forgive me if this doesn't come across as a proper explanation. It's very difficult without putting many passages together to create a mental model for this concept.
All right, we have a number of questions. So
Not as
the first,
challenging as this one.
so the first one is not as challenging. Is it possible to have this presentation as a PDF?
I think it was recorded, right? So there will be a video. PDF, not for now.
Okay. The next question reads, practically speaking, what does it look like to live and act with the eye of oneness? How is this demonstrated in our lives?
Okay. So practically, all actions come from thought. The reality of human beings is their thought. So when our thoughts change, when our perception of reality changes, then our actions change. For instance, the eye of oneness makes you a better scientist. The eye of oneness makes you a better mathematician. The eye of oneness makes you a kinder human being. The eye of oneness helps one see that religions are all the same. Fundamentally, at a deep level, they are the same. The eye of oneness removes tension among religions. The eye of oneness, I can go on and on. The eye of oneness helps us see that there is no difference between science and religion. The eye of oneness helps us see that at a fundamental level, there is no difference between genders. The eye of oneness, I can go on and on and on. The eye of oneness helps us, for instance, if I'm studying a certain discipline, then if I understand that well, the eye of oneness helps me understand another discipline quickly, okay? So the eye of oneness helps me become better students. The eye of oneness helps us become better parents, better educators. The eye of oneness, how many more practical things should I mention? The eye of oneness is the very foundation of everything we do in the world, okay? Nothing escapes this particular principle or concept. All the problems of the world, let me put it another way, so the negative, all the problems of the world are because of the fact that we don't discern with the eye of oneness. Because without the eye of oneness, we fragment life, we fragment society. You see something I didn't mention. At the surface of reality, we put labels, names and labels. And we categorize, and if we don't go deeper, we stay at the superficial level and we divide people. And because we human beings have cognitive inertia, which means we are lazy, then as soon as we see something, we immediately categorize a person into a very simple label. We see that all the time. The media does it all the time, okay? And hopefully we don't do it all the time, but that's another practical implication.
Okay, the next question reads, how can we take the concept of oneness and begin to employ it in our system design, for example, in healthcare systems, which are developed predominantly on a reductionist approach? I understand that there are a few preliminary efforts in this regard, for example, convergence by design and complexity science. What is needed to further these endeavors? This may be a disclaimer, this may be too large or ambitious of a question.
A very quick answer to that is, so what you are asking, if I understand correctly, is design thinking. Because you are trying to design another system, okay, that is effective. Now, generally speaking, all design thinking should start from conceptual and abstract and go to the level of concrete and then implementation. Now, at an abstract conceptual level, if you understand another system that works well, you can use isomorphism to then approach this other problem, and the fundamental structures would be the same. So once you resolve the conceptual aspects of it, then you start particularizing and the implementation of the concrete aspects of it. So if there is a system that whose structures you understand and work well, then you can actually transfer the isomorphic components of it to another system. That was a quick answer, but hopefully it's clear.
The next question reads, thank you for that wonderful thought-provoking talk. A lot to think about. You mentioned without the eye of oneness, we are unjust. To have an eye of oneness, a long list is required. As so many may think they have the eye of oneness, but may have a superficial understanding of it. Does that not lend itself to an unjust society and put us so far away from achieving it?
Again, I hope I understood the question or the comment properly. The eye of oneness, I don't think we should worry about society for now. I should work on myself to develop the eye of oneness, or to discern with the eye of oneness, okay? Now, and I should constantly, so I think the problem is if I'm a self-congratulatory type of person, then it's very difficult to develop this eye of oneness. But if I'm constantly monitoring, okay, how deeply I see things, then, and if I have the longing desire to develop that, okay, then I'm on the right path. And little by little, I can develop it. But the most important thing to know is that this is at the very heart and core of religious scripture. So it is not yet another idea that is competing with other ideas. It is the superordinate concept from which all the other principles of divine religion derive, and all the other principles of science and mathematics and philosophy derive.
The next question reads, does intuition relate to all of this?
Can I pass? Depends on what we mean by intuition. Intuition has become a very nebulous concept, and I have to have a sense of what your mental model of intuition is before that can be answered.
Can I clarify the question?
Oh, is it you? Okay, go ahead.
It was supposed to be anonymous, but if man is his thoughts, and like, is there an interplay between the spiritual world and the material world? You know, just thinking about the cause and effect. Does intuition come to us?
Are you
from
talking about
the spiritual realm?
human cognition? You're talking about, okay.
That's right.
So,
yeah, and where tuition comes from, intuition.
okay, so this is a vast issue to discuss, but very quickly. So there are two words that are used in the scriptures: mind and heart. So for now, very quickly, mind is that agency or faculty that uses external senses to pick up information from the external environment, from the outer world. So let's use the wordings that were used in the passages. So you have an outer world and you have an inner world. The inner world is the underlying structure or world. The outer world is what the senses perceive, outer senses. We also have inner senses. Okay, so the mind is an instrument or a faculty by which we engage with the outer world. The heart is the counterpart of the mind, operating on the world of spirit or the world of the kingdom. Now, the soul of a human being connects the two. So the inner part, we also have 5 faculties. Outward, we have our senses. The information that we take, for instance, our memory that is connected to our physical brain, those are through the common faculty transferred to the inner faculties. The inner faculties receive information from the inner kingdom. So what do we mean by information? You receive promptings of the spirit. If by intuition you mean promptings of the spirit through, I don't know, visions, dream, inspiration, all manner of promptings of the spirit, because remember, the soul is in an ocean of spirit, and it is receiving or is even being bombarded by information from that realm. But it has to take those. If I don't have receptivity in my mind, I cannot even perceive things from the outer world. Same with the inner world. My heart has to be cleansed, okay, to receive images from the world of the kingdom. It can pass them to the mind, vice versa. So there is this exchange, constant exchange of information, but it depends on, just as the mind has to be ready to understand things, the heart has to be ready to understand things. I hope I tried to do it very quickly. So if by intuition you mean that, yes, it plays a role. But if we by the heart we just mean whatever feeling we have, and we say, oh, mind is different from the heart, I don't, or this is from your mind, that's from my feeling or heart. Forgive me, yes, I have a different understanding based on 3,000 passages in the scriptures.
Okay, the next question reads, in physics, do you equate the singularity before the Big Bang as a spiritual occurrence / the will of God?
I don't claim I can answer that, okay? However, I think even that is in the theoretical realm, okay? Depends on what we mean by singularity. And from what I understand from Bahá'í scriptures, creation or existence is an eternal process. Now, if there is a starting point in time-space, okay, and then there is entropy and the universe collapses on itself, then somehow in the abstract world it still exists, okay, and it is giving birth to another seed. Because according to this principle of one universal law or system, all things coming to being or become visible through the process of evolution or gradual development. And they go from seed form to fruition. And then there is an end to them. But there is no real end to anything. There is conservation of not only material reality, there is conservation of spirit. Okay, so if there is a point that there is no, how should I say, there is no existence, then God would not exist. Okay, and I don't think human mind can even engage in that type of discussion because it's a categorical error. I'm sorry, again, I am not trying to sound offensive or anything, but these require much deeper philosophical discussion.
The next question reads, Joe Tranquillo, in talking about isomorphisms, said, despite perhaps operating on different time and space scales and being created out of different materials, there is a one-to-one mapping. Can you talk more about where time and space come into the concept of oneness?
That is a tough question. Okay. In order to actually deal with that, we have to understand the concept of spirit, okay? But let's use an analogy, okay? And I used this analogy for my son when I think he was 6.5, and I think it helped. So if you want to see isomorphism in time space, but different time scales. So if I ask someone, do you see any similarity between the growth of a human being and the growth of a tree or the developmental stages of a tree? Most people intuitively here, I'm using the word intuitively in a different way now, they can see that there are analogical structures in the world, analogical processes and developments, okay? Now, so those could actually be at the same time or at different times. They could be same place, but could be different context even. And we can, for instance, Abdu'l-Baha uses that example in some answered questions. We can, for instance, come and see isomorphism between the growth of planets and the development of an embryo, okay? We can see the same isomorphic structures in, and actually he uses that, he doesn't use the term isomorphism, but the example and explanation he gives in some answered questions is exactly isomorphism in the context of one universal system. So he compares the human body to the development of planets or the universe, okay? And those are two isomorphic systems that are atemporally isomorphic and aspatially isomorphic. Did I answer that question? Because, so, and that comes from isomorphism at the level of spirit. Why? Because Abdu'l-Baha, the way he talks about it, even the human reality originally exists outside of time and space, and it becomes instantiated in infinite forms across time and space. And that abstract a priori reality, you can find it in other phenomena. Sorry, this is tough to answer so quickly with this medium.
Only a couple left. The next question reads, as said earlier, oneness equals truth, but as also quoted, truth is whole that can have parts, but oneness is indivisible. Would you please elaborate on this?
Yes, parts externally. Internally, it's one reality. Okay, now, that is why I had put the question, would oneness even exist without an absolute frame of reference, meaning God? Many years ago, I asked a question from a group of young people. I said, if you prove to me that that one exists, you have proven that God exists. So the reason that that is the case is because if you have an absolute frame of reference, which is the origin of oneness, then you can refer to that as capital T, truth, okay, and capital one. And as you come to total multiplicity or manyness, then it becomes many. This is why nowadays, even philosophically, there is so much debate about whether, so what do you mean by truth? Because when we don't realize there are levels of truth or levels of reality, we collapse them all into either one or two levels and think that the word is meaningless. But we have to think about it in a hierarchical fashion, using levels and with an absolute frame of reference at the top, and then almost infinite number of leaves at the bottom of it, which gives us manyness.
Okay, the next one reads, Thank you for your very profound presentation. My favorite quote of all time is, dost thou consider thyself only a puny form when within thee the universe is folded? Such a profound quote. How can we get such a fractured country and humanity in general to acknowledge this? We are all interconnected so profoundly, even beyond the veil.
Yes, I agree. Oh, there was a how can? Well, when I think this, again, this idea of how can we, are we asking a procedural question or are we asking a fundamental question? The fundamental answer is that all beings are receivers and expressors of things, light. So as a human being, first I have to receive light, and then I have to express light. And light I'm using in a very general metaphoric sense. All understanding is receiving of light. All expression, whether through our daily behavior or expressions of thought through language or in written form, are helping others become elevated. Okay, so again, we need to think about ourselves. If I understand something, then I am helping others. So I don't fall into this dichotomy of practical things and non-practical things. I don't buy into those things. So any human being who understands things is also helping others grow. Because for me, the concept of service, if you are a, I don't know, mathematician who sits down and studies something for 30 years and then writes about something that can help humanity for centuries to come, that is helping.
All right, so the last thing is just a comment. It says, thank you for this profound talk. The subject requires a more thoughtful study and viewing the recorded presentation. With gratitude, from Simin, Brisbane.